anything that originates out of a federal system. The biggest thing we found and the most common is a federal ID number. So in New Hanover County, we have a jail. We house federal inmates. So we know in our records management system, there is a federal ID number that came out of DCI. So we know we have to protect our records management system in accordance with the CJIS requirements. Criminal history, watch list. Again, electronic or on paper. Your front desk is asked to run a background check on somebody, they print that. That paper also has to meet the requirements. So again, the data, first step to compliance, know where your agency stores the data and how they access it and where. Where do you store it? Staff access. Is it in a physically secure location? Is it at a front desk? Is it stored on a network shared drive? Is it on flash drives? That's the thing you need to find out. Again, follow the data, figure out where it is. And then paper and electronic. The big thing here is the data must be encrypted in transit and at rest if it leaves a physically secure location. So they put some new verbiage in here around this. They've expanded what they consider a physically secure location now. We'll go over that a little bit. Who has access to it, direct or indirect? Us as IT folks, we have indirect access to it, but we still have to meet all the requirements because we do have access to it. Anybody with unescorted access must be cleared. So if you have property management staff in your facility that can just walk around, look at screens, look at paper, clean things, there's a minimum set of requirements they have to meet as well because they have unescorted access to the data. So you need to be aware of those things. The new policy kind of breaks out direct, indirect, and what level of background check they need, whether it's just security awareness training or the background checks. How's it transported? This is another thing that during our audit that was brought up. We have the detention center at the north end of our county, and we have records management staff downtown. So how does the data get between the two? Well, electronically, we go across fiber. He asked, is it encrypted? No, it's private fiber. So we got dinged on that one. How are the files transmitted back and forth? Why is this just jumping ahead? So we have case files. I think the batteries need to be changed in this one. We have case files that go from the detention center down to the judicial complex. He asked how those files were transported. Did an admin assistant take them, or is it someone who has had security awareness training and is aware of the policy? So you have to take all those things into consideration. You can't just say, here, Helen, take this file down there if I don't have security awareness training and understand the sensitivity of that data. So one of the big things here, we had policies, IT county policies around media protection, acceptable use, those types of things. During the audit, he looked at the TAC and said, does the sheriff's office have those policies? The answer was no. They had to write the policies. Just having an agency policy is not enough. It has to be specific to the law enforcement agency. They want the agency to have those policies. This is probably the biggest. I've got some statistics that they put out about, this thing is just not working. I apologize, guys. This is probably the biggest failure part of the audit. I won't say failure. but most agencies got dinged because they didn't have policies, written policies, or management control agreements between agencies. So, there we go. So for us, I came into the project as a business analyst supporting the sheriff's office, and they had already said, we're putting this amount of money towards this project. I had no clue what it was and how they came up with those numbers. So I had a set budget to work with already. Luckily, it was appropriate budget, but we found out pretty quickly that we were going to be audited in May. The way the FBI does the audits, it's a 3-year rolling. So we had been told that they were coming to the East Coast. And due to the size of our agency and that we dispatch for multiple municipalities, we were pretty sure we were going to be on that audit list. So we had about a year to get this up and running. We went, not even touching this stuff. We ended up going with SolarWinds, logging and event management. A couple reasons. We had the Orion network monitoring tools already, and SolarWinds had just bought Trigeo. It was a reasonable solution for us. It was easy to implement, easy to use, and it met all the reporting requirements. So we're auditing logons, logoffs, failures, and log our RSA Advanced Authentication failures, those types of things. We ended up going with RSA Advanced Authentication Tokens, and we went with an all or nothing approach. We have detectives, we have patrol. We know that some of the guys take the laptops out of the car. So if you were sworn law enforcement with an MDT, your laptop was getting encrypted and you're going to use an RSA Advanced Authentication Token. Because our sheriff tends to move people around and we didn't want to have to manage, okay, you have an MDT today, but you're going to a desk tomorrow. It was all or nothing. So we went with the RSA Advanced Authentication Tokens. Real easy to implement. Those appliances, they went in, we pretty much set it and forget it. So we have 2 of them. So we're using, probably forget my slides here. We are using Cisco AnyConnect VPN for our VPN client because it's FIPS 140-2 compliant. We were on an older version like 5.3. It actually works pretty well. We one of the ways we got our staff to buy into it is it actually gives you some session persistency. So if they drop their wireless connection or their MiFi goes off, that AnyConnect client will stay active in the background. As soon as you get wireless again, it pops right back up. They don't have to re-authenticate their VPN. For 12 hours, I think we have it set at. So that was kind of nice. It was, the law enforcement staff knew they had to do it, but it was difficult to bring them along. It makes their job harder. So what we did is we had one of the majors in the agency on our project team, and he actually came to some CJIS meetings with us. He went to Raleigh, so we really got buy-in and understanding, and he was able to push that down through the agency. So that helped. Just a bit of advice there. If you have to do this, make sure your guys are included. We went with the USB tokens, so they could either leave them in their laptop and just have to key in their 4-digit PIN, or they could just carry them around and key in their PIN number plus. So we got their thoughts on that. Do you want USB? Getting their buy-in helps. So I gotta tell Dante this one's not working. So that's pretty much what we did. So that's how we implemented the policy. That's how we survived our audit. Couple suggestions: if you are getting ready to be audited, know the policy. Get yourself a 3-ring binder and make one section for each policy area. This saved us during the audit. We actually were lucky enough, I'll say lucky enough, not only was New Hanover County audited, Wrightsville Beach was audited, and Carolina Beach were audited. They actually asked us to come sit in on their audits because we dispatch for them, we support their MDTs. So we sat in on those 2 audits prior to our audit. And having this, you would say, do you have a policy for this? Yep, right here. Here you go. It made it much easier, much faster. And from what I'm hearing, each auditor is different. We got dinged, I'll say, for not having our fiber between the detention center and downtown encrypted, point to point, even though it's a private fiber. Another agency in the West, they never got asked about it. So a lot of it's going to depend on your auditor. Anybody in here getting ready to be audited that you're aware of? You are? Okay. I'll be glad to share anything to help you out later on. Another thing, the auditor did not address the questions to IT. It is a law enforcement policy. Make sure your tax and the people that are sitting in on that audit with them know the answers. They need to be familiar with it because he's addressing it, questions to your tax, your terminal agency coordinators. So that pretty much covers how we survived. Any questions on that?
What was that last URL that we had? That last page?
I'll show it. I'll put it up there at the end. It's that URL is actually the FBI's website. Probably your best source of information. Just go to fbi.gov, search for CJIS. They have a whole resource center out there. They have a mobile appendix.
Yeah. In the detention center, we have a Morpho track fingerprint machine.
Okay.
Do you guys do you have a similar setup where you have to have unique login for each person doing fingerprints? Because it's apparently just going to work for my time. It's not on the domain. Right now we're having to create individual logins.
So
They have turnover, et cetera.
right. So it's a fingerprint machine for intake. When people are being booked in.
Yes.
Is it in a physically secure location?
Well, it's outside of the desk, the main booking area. I mean, it's inside of the, obviously inside of the detention center.
So ours do not have individual logins. We consider that a physically secure location. That equipment is actually, like you said, not on our domain. It doesn't store any CGI. So you're okay with it. It's transmitting the data. Now the state's the one that's responsible for that. You should have a firewall,
Right.
a state firewall that they give you, and that's encrypted up to the state. So that should not fall within scope of this. You're talking about just anything you brought down from BCI. And you're not storing that locally, right? You're not storing fingerprints. So that should be fine. That should be out of scope, which is a good thing. We actually had, our guys brought to me the mobile portable fingerprint readers, and they were like, we want to start using these in the car, downtown at night. And I'm like, all right, let's look at this. They actually had the MorphoTrack mobile fingerprint readers. I set one up with the vendor, and he actually has FBI credentials. He fingerprinted himself on this device on my laptop. It was Bluetooth connected to my laptop. I was logged in with my credentials. It went out the internet, came back and showed me his credentials. I'm like, I'm not DCI certified. How can I get this information? So they're sitting in a box. we're not using them, because the state could never answer the question, how do they meet compliance? So that was kind of scary to me, that he could just, right on my laptop, and the results came back with my name on paper. So we nixed that. So you got to kind of be aware and make them aware of the policy and the requirements. So, any other questions on surviving the audit, getting through it? Okay. So policy version 5.3 came out in August. There's some minor changes, and there's a really big change. And I will tell you, I have not gone through the big change 100%. There used to be 12 areas of the policy. There are now 13 areas. They completely stripped out anything related to mobile devices and put it in its own section. My choice, and still is for now, don't let them do DCI on mobiles. Meaning tablets, smartphones, not MDTs, but there's a lot of costs involved in the back-end infrastructure, as you all know, on mobile device management, encrypting, and all that stuff. So I'm trying to avoid it for now. I think it's going to come. Our vendor is SunGuard OSSI. They already have a mobile client for the iPad, and our guys are like, oh, we have to have it, we want that. Wait, time out, what's the benefit here? Because the back-end cost is going to be pretty significant. So let's see if I can figure out where I was. All right. This is that statistics I mentioned. Security addendums was the #1 non-compliance finding. So make sure you have those. And your training documents. Again, this is all laid out what's required in the policy. Just go through it area by policy area, and make sure you have everything documented. All right. This pretty much does not relate to IT, but it's part of the policy change. They have different files that are included as CGI or non-CGI data. Your TAC, your terminal agency coordinator, should be aware of these things. They get notifications. Different files that are added or removed. Another big change, they removed the interim compliance for police vehicles. A police vehicle is now considered a physically secure location. So, that helps, but if your guys take them out, go to the coffee shop, write a case report on the wireless, it's no longer a physically secure location. So be aware of that. That's why we did the all or nothing. We know our guys take them out of the vehicles, go different places to do reports and stuff. So I believe City of Wilmington, you guys lock them in the mounts. Yes. So that is definitely physically secure. The only way they can be brought out is with a key. And usually the watch commander and somebody in IT, I think, has a key for emergencies. There's some information on that. I'll show you another document from the FBI's website that are showing things like mounted patrol, motorcycles. Some of those areas are considered physically secure locations when it comes to mobile devices. But again, that's a whole new policy area. There's a lot of things you have to do to make them physically secure locations. So just be aware of, whether it is a police vehicle or session locks. I don't know why they removed this. I think everybody should have a session lock. But if it's a read-only terminal, if your agency is just receiving hits and not able to make any changes, you no longer need to do the 30-minute timeout. We went with our agency-wide, we have 10-minute lockouts. We allow the law enforcement 30 minutes, which is the maximum allowed by CJIS policy. That was just kind of, We understand it's a pain for you guys. We'll give you 30 minutes, the maximum we can. So it was give and take for us. Jeez. All right. PIN requirements. This was something, I have not made this change yet. Our guys are not going to be happy because when we issued the advanced authentication tokens to them, we told them it had to be a minimum of 4 digits. And it would never change. Well, policy 5.3, it's changing. So now it has to be a minimum of 6. And it's pretty stringent. It's, no repeating characters, no sequential patterns, won't be the same as a user ID. The only good side to it is it's only changing once a year. For us, it's not a big deal because we're using the RSA Advanced Authentication. We have a self-service portal they can go to and change their PIN anytime they want. So we don't have to bring every one of them in and have them change them. But that was a selling point for us to them. Now I got to go back and say, guess what, guys? Now it's got to be 6 and it's got to be changed. So there are a couple exceptions around here. To me, they're not real clear. So I would go ahead and just do the 6 digits. Some of the waivers here, with the exception, you actually have to have them cleared by the state. So it's really easier just to go ahead and make them do 6. Again, physically secure location, we talked about that. Police vehicle, an area, a room, a group of rooms within a facility. So I had somebody ask me Tuesday, Wednesday, the data's in our data center, but the law enforcement is in another building. Are we a physically secure location? The answer to that, if it's in the IT data center, probably not. You can become physically secure with a lot of controls put around that, a lot of logging, who has access in and out. So my suggestion to them was look at the cost of what you're going to need to do versus going ahead and letting them move the data there to their data center. Because law enforcement facility is a physically secure location. IT data center is not necessarily a physically secure location. So you get away, your options there and your cost. The other thing here with the encryption, they've changed it that data at rest does not have to be FIPS 142-2 compliant. There's an allowance for FIPS 197. Again, if you're encrypting, go ahead and do the maximum. Do the 140-2 so your data is encrypted at rest and in transit. Just go ahead and it meets the NIST requirements as well. All right, this is the big one here, your mobile devices. This chart kind of just shows you, and I apologize for it being a little small, but there's a lot there. So what they did is this area 13, they took 802.11 wireless, cellular, Bluetooth, mobile device management, all of those things, and moved them to this new policy area. So there's definitely some changes. Personal firewall has been moved in there. Incident response for mobiles is slightly different. So this is a big area. Again, I need to get a little bit more familiar with it before we decide to say yes or no to the mobiles. And we don't have an MDM in place, so we have to do that whole back-end infrastructure for the mobile device management. I know there's a lot of good tools out there, but we just haven't gone that route yet at Hanover County. So I know a lot of different agencies are, so we'll reach out to some of you when we decide to do that. Personnel access and security requirements. Again, it's the capability, not necessarily the act. Just because I can't run a DCI query on a terminal doesn't mean that I don't still have to meet the requirements, because I can physically walk by, I support them. So be aware of the personnel access. Everybody requires security awareness training, regardless if you have direct or indirect access to it. That's at a minimum, they must have security awareness training. And all that needs to be documented. They will ask for a copy of your security awareness training logs. Again, have them in the book. So they decided in 5.3 to clarify this a little bit. I don't think it's any different than our previous interpretation of what access is, but they did put some details around it. Logical access. Network admins, they have logical access. Physical access, if you physically walk by the data, see it. Direct access, I think, is the one that they really clarified a little bit more, is the ability to run the query, to sit in front of the terminal and run a DCI query or an NCIC query on the mobile or on the terminals. Indirect access, so our public safety analysts have indirect access because they support the records management system, which houses the CJIS, the federal ID number. So they have indirect access. So that just kind of clarifies. Again, I don't think it really changes the way we're doing things. They just tried to make it a little clearer. Basically, either have access to it or you don't, is the way we look at it. Again, physical or logical access, direct or indirect. If you have indirect access, AA is not necessarily required. And I think that's why they clarified it. To say, okay, you really can't run a query, you're just in support of, you don't need to do the advanced authentication. Which is probably a good thing because all of our network admins don't have tokens yet. But just, again, clarification. Fingerprint background checks, we background check all of IT. Everybody in our agency has a set of fingerprints on file. Some of us more than once because the morphin track machines don't always like to work well. Those are pretty much the big changes. It's a lot of information. It's tough to go through, especially early in this morning. I wanted to leave a lot of time for questions because I think that's where I really learned a lot about this, is being able to sit in a room and discuss and answer questions and figure it all out.
So the requirement for encryption on 5.1, is that part of the 5.3?
It is not. That was actually that's in the original 5.2. Now, I'll bring this other document up for you guys. Again, this website's fabulous. You're pretty much your only resource. So I found, in preparing for this, they had an ISO symposium this year. That'll open. There is a lot of good information in this document, and again, it's on the FBI's website. There is actually, at the end of this, discussion around what's coming, and one of those was the potential of removing that. So we may not have to encrypt building to building. So I'm going to try and get up with Brian Dickerson with the state and say, is this going to be on the CJIS board in the next year? Because that'll save us a lot of money. So, and again, some auditors questioned it, others didn't. They're point to point. So, what else we got?
So Helen, do you have a disaster preparation for society for your resident system now?
No, we do not. We have backups.
So you have backups, so they're in your data center or they're there?
They are off-site. They are encrypted and they are transported off-site, and the person that transports those tapes has gotten security awareness training. Even though he can't get to the data, he has indirect access. So he went through security awareness training. We have a record of that.
City of Durham, police department, they have some
at rest.
and rest, and have the parameters security, that locates their data.
Yes. You also have to do things like ability to run reports of who's had access to that data center. You have to be selective in who has access to that. If you have a vendor coming in to do work on a server, you can't just say, here you go. They've got to be escorted. So as long as you have those policies in place and meet all those requirements, yes, you can. Yeah. And as long as you can run reports, and if you're audited, have a sample of that report. That's what I did. I printed out copies of the reports and had it right in front of him. He's like, do you have this? And we said, yep, here you go.
That's great.
Yeah, you gotta look at the cost. You gotta look at the cost. It sounds like you're pretty much there for a physically secure location. So your cost to finish, to get 100% there isn't gonna be that much. So, and just, again, go through the policy and show them, I meet this, I meet this. So, I'm sure it'll be out on the NCLGISA, and yes, I'll be glad to. I'll email it to anybody, and I apologize, not sure what happened there. Technology. Hang on, grab that.
Yeah, what's your perspective on outside agencies that have boxes that query the RMS server? I'm thinking specifically of NC Savin that does the victim notification stuff, and OSSI's P2P. That's the two that we work with.
Yeah, OSSI is covered, but make sure you have a copy of their document. OSSI has actually gone through and fingerprinted and background checked every one of their staff, and we have copies of their documents that say they've met the requirements, the security awareness training and the background check. We have those on file in our agency. So you're good there. The NC Savin, we have the same system, and we actually have them locked down that they can only get to certain, the way the query runs, it's very specific, and they don't have access to anything else except for that little chunk of data. And it is encrypted.
Their new methodology is to put the box that does the queries in their location in Kentucky and run that through a VPN that has, an end on their side and a box on our side.
Right.
I talked to Brian Dickerson at DOJ, and his perspective was that everybody that had management over that box and saving would need to be background checked.
Correct.
Which hasn't been done. And Savings, they're not all that aware of that.
Yeah, and that's where you get into some struggles with some of your vendors. And when you start having that conversation with sheriff, captain, whoever, they're going to need to fight that battle because they actually have more pull than you do. Because they don't want that machine to go away. That's a very public-facing operation. They don't want that victim notification to go away. So let your sheriff or somebody in the agency fight that battle, because they'll get it. Sheriff's Association, or there's a couple law enforcement associations that can actually make headway with Savin, I think, because they don't want those machines to go away. We have the same thing. Yeah, when that thing goes down, our sheriff's office is calling because they want those victims notified. So, yes, ma'am.
So there's no analysis that you use for doing it, so cloud.
There is some information around it. Again, we don't have our CJI data in the cloud. We made the decision to not. That's something we want to control locally.
As long as it's not there, but I think you want.
Just for DR? Yes, there are requirements around it. There are specifications. Again, it's got to be encrypted in transit, at rest. It can't be commingled data. You got to be really careful with that. Your DR site will have to have at a minimum security awareness training, everybody there, in order for that to meet compliance. So that's why we said We store just this stuff, some stuff to the cloud, some stuff you keep locally. We actually did the basic security awareness that the state allows. North Carolina State will give you, yeah, it's a video that's probably 2 years old. Yep, and it meets their requirements because it's their video. We are actually getting ready to kick off a huge security awareness campaign in Montgomery County, and we are going to go with SANS. They have great training videos. So not just on CJIS, but HIPAA and PCI. So, and they're actually have some really good pricing going on in December. Oh, good to know.
There's also that we have to review our router and VPN log. How do you handle the parsing and all that?
I don't think anybody monitors it or reviews it weekly. We do. We have network monitoring, we have alerting, we have different things. The requirements are actually for the law enforcement agency to do that.
Well, they look at us to figure out how.
Right. We have SolarWinds, Orion, network monitoring, alerting. It really gives you those reports. I can click of a button, failed logon attempts, all that type of reporting. It makes it very easy, and in all honesty, it's pretty reasonable compared to some of the other products out there. I needed to find good, cheap, fast. And it's worked for us, so it's a pretty good tool. And it integrates with the rest of our network monitoring stuff. Any other questions?
Is there a resource
I'm sorry?
is there a resource
On the FBI Gov, the CJIS resource page, as part of the policy, there are sample incident response reporting forms, there are sample security addendums, MOUs, those types of things. Your actual policies, your acceptable use policy, that meets the requirements generally. The splash screen was in the CIO's class the other day, and Shannon was talking about that. Your privacy, you have no privacy. We put a splash screen on it, log on, saying that we can and will monitor your information. So that's another requirement. Shannon probably has some. I've shared some of our policies. I'll be glad. I'll give anybody my contact information. I've given them to several cities, counties, Western Carolina. Law enforcement, I'm like, but yeah, and we all have a lot of these policies, so let's share them. I'd like to talk to Shannon and see what we can get put up either on the NCLGISA website or the School of Government.
I think one of the most important things that I've heard you say, nobody's mentioned it, unless you mentioned 10 minutes later, step out of the phone call, is the fact that what you're telling us is that if you physically lock the laptops into a docking station in a control car, authentication is no longer necessary.
Correct.
Because on our agency alone, that's $20,000 savings if we're not very big.
The police vehicle is now considered a physically secure location.
As long as we can lock it in and show that it's
And advanced authentication is not required. Your two-factor, something you have, something you know. You still want to encrypt them. You still need to session lock them. But you do not need advanced authentication. That's a huge
I bet
savings.
there's a couple of people here that love it.
But just because we're trying to have
Correct. Hanover County is one of them. We have almost 300 laptops, MDTs, RSA tokens. Not only that, we offer to help Carolina Beach, Wrightsville Beach. They're on our domain. We do the logging for them. We issue them their RSA tokens. So that was just they're, good faith municipality, we help them.
You gotta love bureaucracy, say. There's nothing said. Yeah.
Exactly. We're not going away from it.
Yeah,
We're not
oh,
gonna
I would.
it's a good thing. It really is a good thing, so.
We use something software called RMS, and they're working on putting dual into their software. They're newer updates. And that was one of the things that we were trying to just, like 2FA, some of y'all probably know this.
Yeah.
And, like obviously that's a little solution, but, counties just don't have a lot of money right now. If you say, we solve one minor, a big problem, still a minor problem, that's a lot.
Yeah.
$25,000. That's a lot of money.
Yeah. We spent a lot of money, a lot.
If you got 3 hours cars, I know you spent a lot of money. We went 25,000.
I'm gonna get down to the bottom of this. Again, this is on the FBI's website, guys, and there was things I picked up from this that I hadn't caught. It actually gives you some scenarios, but, it is. There are several solutions already published that if you're within there, we did send ours up because we were probably one of the first to actually do a full-blown solution. And yes, we sent it up to the state, Brian Dickinson. We sent it to Shannon and then Ray Hillen, and they forwarded it up for us. I had one downstairs tell me they were CJIS compliant. And I was like, be quiet, Ellen. There is no such thing as a vendor being compliant. They can't. You're the one that has to be compliant. It has nothing to do with the application. So yeah, be careful of the vendor stuff. And it is a good idea to run it through the state, make sure. Send a network diagram in your scenario. And what we discovered early on, or what Shannon discovered early on, it's not necessarily the scenario, it's how the scenario is written. So it's all about your verbiage when you submit them to the state. So, and again, our auditor dinged us for not encrypting, but another auditor in the western part of the state did. So, it really wasn't bad. There was, a lot of stress going in. The audit was, he sits there with a big checklist. I may even have a copy of our audit if anybody wants to see it. Sits there with the checklist, and as long as you have all your policies and know how to answer the questions, it's not bad. FBI. It's FBI. The FBI will come in and do the audit. They will generally have somebody from the SBI, the state, your coordinator, trainer, whoever will probably want to be there, because what happens is once the audit is complete, it goes to the state. You don't see it. The state gets the results, and the state is responsible for making sure you follow up on all your remediation. Because they're the ones, the state actually is the one that gets dinged, not you. Because it's their responsibility to make sure we're compliant. So. No, and I think it depends, and we asked that question because of our encryption issue. They understand there's costs involved in these things and budgeting cycles and those. If it's a policy, yeah, they want you to fix it pretty quick, but there is no real time frame. We were told that there were agencies that were audited a year prior to us, and they still hadn't fixed everything, 18 months later. It depends on the cost and how significant it is. The county.
So review their actual
Yes.
months.
Yeah. Yeah, we sat through the audit. This was an IT project, even though it's law enforcement. That's not their job. Our chief will tell you, I don't want to do IT. Her job's law enforcement. But we worked together and made sure that everything we were doing was correct, and they know where their data is. I knew nothing about CGI data before this. So yes, we worked together and we were there. And the ones they want there are your tax, your internal agency coordinators, or somebody along those lines. Your security officer, you really should, law enforcement should have a security officer assigned in their agency. Ours doesn't necessarily. But yeah, so just work together with them. We actually, it was fun, I sat in on 3 others. Well, ours was the 3rd one, so by the time he got to us, he walked in the room and he's like, okay, grab the book, and he's like, yep. Because we sat in on Wrightsville Beach and Carolina Beach. So he already knew what we did. So, yeah. Yeah. Wow, 10 minutes early. All right, I have some of my business cards. I'll make sure this presentation gets put up on the website or wherever they're going to put them. And I'll be glad to email it to you as well. And this, again, the CJIS resource site on FBI.gov is your best resource. I've got the actual policy. If anybody wants to read to sleep tonight. And I did actually bring our little Bible that needs to be updated for the day of the audit. So it's got the FIPS 140-2 certificates and everything in there. It's got our security awareness log, got our reports. It just makes it better when you go in prepared. I'm around. Yes. Just chat, questions. Now I gotta fuss at Dante. It's neat. It's, once you